On my front yard that crisp Saturday morning, the little white price sticker on my wedding gown read a mere 25 cents. I stood there on the dew-damp grass, arms folded against the early chill, watching my husband Robert hold aloft the flowing white silk dress I'd worn down the aisle 32 years earlier. The one I'd lovingly wrapped in layers of acid-free tissue and tucked away in a cedar chest in the attic, preserving it like a relic from a happier chapter. He was grinning broadly at the cluster of neighbors, acting as if this were the most hilarious prank imaginable. "Come on, everyone, who's going to make an offer? This is genuine designer, real couture." He gave the gown a playful shake, and the delicate beading caught the golden morning sunlight, sparkling like tiny stars. "My wife hasn't been able to slip into this thing in ages anyway. Isn't that right, Catherine? Must be 20 years by now." The crowd on our driveway, good friends and acquaintances I'd welcomed into our home countless times for summer barbecues, holiday open houses, neighborhood book clubs, and potluck dinners, shifted their weight from foot to foot, clearly uncomfortable. Linda Morrison suddenly found her sneakers riveting. The Hendersons buried their attention in a cardboard box of faded Tupperware. A few others pretended to check price tags on mismatched lamps and forgotten board games. Heat flared across my cheeks, a rush of humiliation I hadn't felt so acutely in years, but I kept my face composed, lips pressed into a thin, neutral line. I'd perfected that mask over decades, never reacting too strongly, never causing a fuss, always being the gracious, unflappable partner who smoothed everything over. "Robert," I said quietly, stepping closer. "Could we please talk inside for just a minute?" "Hold on a second, Kathy. We've got potential customers here." He waved me off without even looking, turning instead to lift a small velvet jewelry box from the table. "Now these, beautiful earrings she barely ever touches. $5 and they're yours." Those were the diamond studs he'd presented to me on our 10th anniversary, wrapped in silver paper with a flourish and a kiss. I'd stopped wearing them altogether after the day I accidentally overheard him on the golf course, chuckling to his buddy that they were just a little something to keep the wife satisfied and quiet. But it was his next casual remark that sliced through the remaining threads holding me together. "You know what?" he said with a hearty laugh, sweeping his arm toward the rows of folding tables groaning under the weight of my personal history, shelves of my favorite novels with dog-eared pages, soft cashmere sweaters I'd collected over travels, framed family photos from vacations and milestones, delicate porcelain pieces inherited from my mother who'd passed 5 years earlier, even the hand-embroidered linens she'd taught me to appreciate. My wife's been parked at home for a solid 30 years now, not exactly burning the midnight oil. Figured we might as well cash in on all this stuff she's been accumulating while, well, not doing much else. A few polite chuckles died quickly in the awkward air. That's when I spotted David Chen's sleek BMW easing to the curb. David had been our family's financial advisor, or at least the one Robert believed was solely in charge, for the past 15 years. We met faithfully every quarter to review statements, projections, and strategies. Robert had never once bothered to attend. "You've got this, Kathy," he'd always say with an affectionate pat. "I trust you completely with all the boring paperwork and number crunching." The boring stuff. David climbed out, adjusted his tie, and took in the bizarre scene. Folding tables, curious neighbors, and Robert proudly brandishing my wedding gown like a clearance rack trophy. His expression shifted from mild curiosity to outright alarm in the span of a heartbeat. "Catherine," he called, striding briskly up the driveway. "I received your message this morning." "We really should." He stopped short, gaze fixed on the dress. "What's going on here, Dave?" Robert greeted him with a friendly clap on the shoulder. "Having a big clear-out of Kathy's old clutter. Want first dibs on anything." "Everything's priced to move." David's eyes flicked to me. I met them steadily, and in that shared glance, something deep within me, something that had been slowly, painfully bending under years of weight, finally snapped clean through. "Robert," I said, my voice remarkably calm and level. "We need to have a conversation, right now." "Just 1 minute." "David," I interrupted without breaking eye contact with my husband. "Why don't you go ahead and explain to Robert exactly what I've been occupying myself with these last 3 decades? All that. Nothing he just mentioned." David swallowed hard. He understood precisely what I was asking him to reveal. "Robert," he began measuredly, "you do understand that Catherine is the one who actively manages your entire investment portfolio, correct?" Robert barked out a disbelieving laugh. "What are you talking about? You're the professional we hired to handle our finances, Dave. That's why we pay your firm." "I offer guidance and recommendations," David clarified, his tone growing firmer. "But Catherine makes every final decision. She handled everything on her own for a full decade before I joined, and she's directed it all with my support for the 15 years since." By now, the neighbors had stopped all pretense of browsing. Linda Morrison stood frozen, mouth slightly open. Someone's phone was already recording discreetly. "That's absurd," Robert protested, though the cocky edge had slipped from his voice. "Kathy doesn't have any real experience with—" "Your current net worth stands at $14.2 million, David announced clearly, projecting so everyone could hear. "Your compensation as a pharmaceutical sales director has contributed approximately $1.8 million over the course of your career. The remaining $12.4 million, that's entirely the result of Catherine's strategic investing over the past 25 years. A profound hush blanketed the lawn. You could almost hear the numbers echoing. $12.4 million, built by the woman who'd supposedly spent 30 years doing nothing. Let me take you back further, so you truly understand how we arrived here. When Robert and I exchanged vows in the summer of 1985, I was 28 years old and thriving as a junior equity analyst at Goldman Sachs in New York. I was genuinely talented, perhaps even exceptional. I possessed an intuitive knack for dissecting corporate filings, spotting emerging patterns that escaped most colleagues, and forecasting market turns with an accuracy that earned quiet praise from partners decades my senior. My performance reviews glowed, promotions were whispered about. Then I discovered I was pregnant with our first child, Emma. One quiet evening on our sofa, Robert took both my hands in his, looked earnestly into my eyes and said, "Catherine, we need to plan for the long term. My career is accelerating fast. Regional director is practically in the bag. But to seize it fully, I need a true teammate at home. Someone who can orchestrate the entertaining, oversee the household, be present for the children every day." He squeezed my fingers gently. "You understand, don't you? And besides, you can always jump back into finance later when things settle." I was 7 months pregnant, swollen ankles, constant fatigue, glowing with anticipation yet terrified of the unknown. I trusted his vision of our future. I believed him. Emma was born, a tiny miracle with Robert's dark hair and my gray eyes. Thomas arrived 2 years later, equally perfect. I dove headfirst into motherhood and into crafting the supportive life Robert described. I chauffeured to every t-ball practice and piano lesson, volunteered as room parent, baked elaborate birthday cakes from scratch. I orchestrated sophisticated dinner parties where his colleagues felt pampered and impressed, ensuring his professional star kept rising. His shirts were always crisp, his travel arrangements flawless, his mother's handwritten birthday card mailed without fail. Yet once the children were tucked in and the house fell silent, I would pad downstairs in my robe, brew a cup of chamomile, and open my laptop at the kitchen table beside scattered copies of the Wall Street Journal and Investor's Business Daily. We had roughly $50,000 saved, mostly from Robert's annual bonuses. He casually instructed me to put it somewhere safe, assuming I'd choose a conservative CD or money market fund. Instead, I quietly opened a full-featured brokerage account in both our names. I spent months in pure research mode, studying charts, reading SEC filings, building watchlists, waiting patiently for conviction. My first meaningful trade came in 1995, carefully selected technology stocks during the early internet boom. I entered positions gradually, exited near peaks. Within 2 years, that initial $50,000 had quadrupled to $200,000. I mentioned offhand one evening that we'd enjoyed some lucky returns on investments. Robert smiled absently, murmured, "That's wonderful, honey," and returned to the sports highlights. I never paused after that. My approach was meticulous, almost obsessive. Every quarterly statement, every tax document carried both our names. I'd sit beside him on the couch, highlight key points, explain gains and rationale, and ask if he had questions. He'd scan briefly, sign wherever I pointed, then say something like, "You're amazing at handling these details, Kathy. I'd be lost without you." but his eyes never lingered on the numbers. He never followed up. Because I wasn't in a skyscraper office wearing power suits, he simply assumed my days held no real labor. I navigated the explosive tech rally of the late 1990s with precision. I recognized the housing bubble inflating in the mid-2000s and liquidated our real estate holdings 6 months before the 2007 crash. When markets plummeted in 2008 and panic gripped everyone else, I deployed cash methodically into undervalued blue chips and growth names that would lead the recovery. 25 years of disciplined, insightful, often brilliant decisions, all executed in the quiet hours while the rest of the house slept. And throughout it all, Robert genuinely believed I'd spent those decades idly hoarding junk. Now, standing amid that humiliating yard sale with my wedding gown reduced to pocket change, as David laid bare the financial reality for the entire neighborhood to absorb, a profound sense of liberation surged through me, cool, clear, and unstoppable. "That's impossible," Robert stammered, his face draining of color. "Catherine couldn't possibly." "I can pull up every statement," David replied evenly. "We've reviewed them together every quarter for 15 years. Catherine and I, you've received invitations to every single meeting, Robert. You've never once attended. Because I trusted her to take care of things." "Take care of what exactly?" I asked softly. "To manage the home, and I didn't mean it like that." "You meant precisely that," I said, surprised by my own steadiness. "Every company Christmas party where you introduced me simply as my wife. Every round of golf where you joked to your friends that you brought home the bacon while I kept the home fires warm. Every casual comment dismissing my days as empty leisure. Then the words I'd rehearsed silently for months, perhaps years, emerged effortlessly. "Catherine wants a divorce." Robert's face cycled rapidly, disbelief, outrage, desperation. "You're not serious, over a stupid yard sale." "Cassie, I was only having a laugh. The yard sale is merely the final straw," I replied. "David, we need to make immediate changes to the accounts." His phone was already in hand. "Tell me what you require." "Freeze all joint access immediately. Transfer every asset I've generated into individual accounts titled solely in my name. Prepare full documentation for my attorney. That can all be ready first thing Monday." "Wait, just wait." Robert let the wedding dress slip from his fingers. It drifted down in a soft heap on the oil-stained concrete, collecting dust and bits of gravel. "You can't do that. That's our money. I earned it through my job." "No, Robert. I earned the vast majority. Every dollar beyond your direct salary came from my research, my timing, my decisions, made while you were on golf outings, sales trips to Vegas, or telling anyone who would listen that your wife spent her days lounging and eating chocolates." By now, several neighbors had phones openly recording. The story would blanket our tidy suburb by dinner time. The old Catherine, the one obsessed with appearances and avoiding scandal, would have crumbled in mortification. But that version of me evaporated the moment he affixed a 25-cent sticker to 32 years of shared life. "David," I continued calmly, "I'd also appreciate details on the Morrison residence on Oak Street. I believe the family is preparing to list it next month." Linda Morrison's head snapped toward me, eyes wide. "How on earth did you know that?" I offered her a small, knowing smile. "I keep informed, Linda. And I suspect the property would serve beautifully as headquarters for the boutique investment firm I'm planning to launch." "Investment firm?" Robert's voice cracked sharply. "You can't possibly run a business. You have no idea how to lead a company, handle operations, make executive." I turned to face him directly for the first time that morning. "Robert, I've successfully overseen a multi-million-dollar portfolio for 25 years. Researching, allocating, risk managing, compounding at rates most professionals only dream of. I've executed 6- and 7-figure decisions before dawn while you slept soundly. I am confident I can manage leasing commercial space, designing letterhead, and hanging a brass nameplate." David could no longer hide his broad grin. "Catherine, I happen to know 3 exceptionally talented young analysts, sharp women who have grown frustrated in traditional firms where their ideas are routinely ignored or appropriated. They'd leap at the opportunity to join you. I'll forward their resumes this afternoon." "That would be wonderful. Thank you, David." "Catherine, please," Robert pleaded, all bluster evaporated, replaced by raw fear. "Let's go inside and talk rationally." We don't need to air this in front of the whole neighborhood. You had no qualms publicly devaluing me when you believed I was worthless, I replied evenly. I see no reason to hide now that everyone knows my true worth. I surveyed the tables laden with pieces of my life, books that had shaped my thinking, clothing that held memories of trips and milestones, my mother's cherished china that had graced countless family dinners. This sale is officially over, I declared. Everyone, please gather your things and go, and someone kindly escort my husband off the premises. Robert opened his mouth to object, but David placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. Robert, it might be wisest to stay elsewhere for a few days while you two work through next steps. This is my house, he protested weakly. Actually, I said, the deed, securely filed in my safe deposit box, lists the property solely in my name. I purchased it outright with trading profits in 2008 during the market bottom. You signed the closing documents. You simply never bothered to read them. The revelation struck him visibly, like a gust of wind. The cars, he asked faintly. The Mercedes sedan is titled to you, fully paid. The Lexus SUV is mine. The lake house on Lake Geneva, acquired in my name in 2015 with post-recovery gains. And as David just outlined, the overwhelming majority of investment accounts are the direct result of my labor. I bent and carefully lifted the soiled wedding dress from the driveway. The once pristine silk now bore streaks of grime, yet it could be restored with professional care. The one thing I cannot recover, I said quietly, is the past 32 years. But I refuse to waste a single day of whatever time remains. Neighbors began folding tables, murmuring goodbyes, casting sympathetic or stunned glances over their shoulders as they departed. Robert remained rooted in the center of the empty driveway, looking suddenly small and lost. I truly don't understand, he said finally, voice cracking. If you were so deeply unhappy, why on earth did you stay all this time? I folded the gown gently over my arm. Because I loved you fiercely. Because I believed wholeheartedly that we were genuine partners. Because I convinced myself that if I supported you tirelessly enough, hosted enough dinners, raised perfect children, managed every detail of our life, you would eventually see me, truly see me, for the capable, driven woman I am. I do see you now. No. You saw convenience. A reliable organizer who kept your world frictionless, dry cleaning collected, parties flawless, children thriving, so you could focus solely on your career. You never once asked what occupied my days beyond surface chores. You never expressed curiosity about my interests, my thoughts, my ambitions. I assumed you were content staying home. I cherished being present for Emma and Thomas when they needed me most. But they built their own lives years ago, Emma thriving in Seattle, Thomas established in Boston. When is the last time you inquired what I dreamed of doing with this next chapter of my life? He stared at the ground, offering no reply. My attorney will be in touch next week, I informed him. David, I'll call your office Monday morning to finalize those transfers. Of course, Catherine, and for whatever it's worth, your analytical skill and discipline have always profoundly impressed me. You possess a rare, exceptional gift. Thank you, David. That means a great deal. I watched Robert shuffle to his Mercedes, sit behind the wheel motionless for several long minutes, perhaps replaying decades of missed signals, overlooked statements, dismissed contributions, before finally starting the engine and driving away, shoulders slumped. Once the street emptied and quiet returned, I carried the dress inside, laid it carefully across the dining table, and dialed our daughter. Mom. Hey, what's going on? Sweetheart, I need the name of a highly recommended divorce attorney. Do you or any of your Seattle colleagues know someone outstanding? A stunned pause, then pure joy flooded her voice. Mom, are you actually serious right now? Deadly serious. Oh my God, finally, she laughed through sudden tears. I've been praying for this day for years. He's treated you so dismissively, so condescendingly. You noticed all of it. Of course we did. Thomas and I both saw how he spoke over you, minimized everything you said, acted like you were just background scenery. We just never knew how to bring it up without hurting you more. Tears welled in my eyes. I thought I'd hidden it well. You tried so hard, but Mom, you're brilliant, always have been. You've got this razor-sharp mind, and he made you shrink it to fit his narrow idea of what a wife should be. I hated watching it happen. It's finished now, I said, voice steadying. And Emma, I'm going to start my own firm. a women-focused investment management practice. That's incredible. Do you need seed capital? Because I've been saving aggressively, and I'd love nothing more than to invest with you. We'll discuss details next week. But yes, darling, I would be honored to have your support. Thomas's reaction when I called him minutes later was even more exuberant. About damn time, Mom. Do you need me there? I can hop the next flight out of Boston tonight. I'm holding steady, sweetheart, but thank you. Your support means everything. Dad is going to completely lose it when he realizes how much he's actually losing. He retains his salary, his retirement accounts, his car, I corrected gently. He'll be financially comfortable. He simply won't have me orchestrating his entire existence anymore. That's exactly what I meant, Thomas said. He's losing the person who truly mattered most. The divorce proceedings stretched over 6 tense months. Robert initially fought bitterly, insisting through his attorney that he deserved half of everything because he'd held the real career, while I stayed home. They accused me of secretly controlling finances. My attorney, Patricia Mendes, a fiercely intelligent powerhouse with a reputation for dismantling weak arguments, eviscerated their case in a single hearing. Your client, she told Robert's lawyer in front of the judge, personally signed every quarterly brokerage statement for 15 years. He received formal invitations to every review meeting. He was copied on emails confirming every major transaction. The only concealment here was Mr. Davis's willful choice not to read a single page. The judge ruled decisively in my favor. I retained 87% of the wealth I had generated. Robert kept the proceeds directly tied to his salary and bonuses, approximately $1.2 million after taxes. Respectable, but a stark contrast to the $14 million I walked away with. The following March, I purchased the charming Morrison property on Oak Street, a gracious historic home with ample parking and beautiful natural light, and opened the doors of Davis Investment Management. David referred 3 outstanding young female analysts, each eager to escape environments where their talent was undervalued. Emma relocated temporarily from Seattle to oversee branding, website, and early operations. Thomas invested his own savings and introduced high-growth tech clients from his network. Within 2 years, we managed over $200 million in assets. By year 5, that figure surpassed $500 million. I'm 63 now. Divorced 6 years. My firm employs 12 dedicated professionals in a warm, collaborative space that was once our neighbor's home. After Robert was forced to sell our original house, his salary alone couldn't cover the mortgage. I quietly purchased the property next door and converted it into additional offices and conference rooms. Most mornings I enjoy coffee on the wide front porch, watching the street come alive. Without fail, Robert drives past in his Mercedes on his way to the same pharmaceutical sales territory he's covered for decades, still earning his steady $120,000 a year. Neighborhood gossip reports he's dating a woman in her mid-30s who is, by all accounts, extremely accommodating and supportive of his lifestyle. I genuinely wish her greater wisdom than I possessed at her age. Do I regret those 32 years? The question is more nuanced than a simple yes or no. I will never regret the privilege of raising Emma and Thomas, being present for every fever, every triumph, every ordinary moment that shaped them into remarkable adults. I don't regret the countless quiet nights and pre-dawn hours I spent building our family's financial security while everyone else slept peacefully. I don't even regret staying as long as I did. Leaving prematurely might have fractured me in ways harder to heal. What I do regret is the slow erosion of my own ambition, the way I folded my dreams away like that wedding dress to make room for his. I regret every dinner party where I laughed at his recycled stories while my own intellect gathered dust. I regret believing that diminishing myself would somehow earn deeper love or respect. But I harbor zero regrets about the woman I became the instant I finally stood tall. Last month, I was invited to keynote a national women's leadership and entrepreneurship conference. They asked me to speak on building businesses later in life and reclaiming power after personal upheaval. I stepped to the podium and told them the unvarnished truth. My husband of 32 years attempted to sell my wedding dress at a neighborhood yard sale for 25 cents, I began. He placed a literal price tag on our entire marriage, on decades of partnership, sacrifice, child-rearing, and unseen labor, and decided it was worth exactly 1/4. The vast auditorium fell completely silent. But what he never comprehended, I continued, is that while he was busy tagging my past for pennies, I had spent those same years quietly constructing our future. Late at night, early in the morning, I studied markets, executed trades, compounded wealth with discipline and foresight. When he dismissed me as boring, introduced me as merely my wife, or claimed to friends that I contributed nothing of substance, I was making us multimillionaires. I paused, scanning hundreds of attentive faces. He tried to define my value at 25 cents, but my value was never his to determine. It never was, and it never will be. The standing ovation lasted nearly 5 full minutes. Afterward, women waited in long lines to speak with me, sharing their own stories of being undervalued at work, diminished at home, rendered invisible by partners, bosses, even family. One woman in particular lingered, early 40s, poised yet visibly weary, eyes reflecting my own younger uncertainty. "What finally gave you the courage to leave?" she asked softly. I placed a hand on her arm. I realized I had already been alone for years, even while married. And if I was going to be alone regardless, I chose to be alone with dignity, alone with possibility, alone with my own ambitions and voice guiding me, rather than his constant, quiet erosion. She nodded slowly, tears brimming. "I think I've been alone for a long time, too." "Then stop pretending otherwise," I said gently. "Stop shrinking yourself for someone who won't even notice your absence until the laundry piles up or dinner isn't waiting. Your worth is not negotiable." Last week, an email appeared in my inbox, the first direct contact from Robert in over 4 years. "Catherine," it read, "I caught your profile in the Wall Street Journal. Congratulations on your remarkable success. I always knew you had that kind of potential in you." I stared at the screen for a long while, reading and rereading those words. He always knew. Yet he'd called my passions boring. He'd boasted that I did nothing. He'd priced my wedding dress at loose change. I deleted the message without reply, because I've learned a vital truth. When the arc of history proves them wrong, people hastily rewrite their role in it. They'll claim they always believed in you, always encouraged you, always recognized your brilliance. But I remember every detail vividly, every casual dismissal, every erasure of my contributions, every moment I was reduced to just anything. I no longer require his validation. I never truly did. My validation flows daily from the 12 talented professionals who rely on my leadership, from clients who entrust their life savings to my judgment, from Emma and Thomas, who proudly tell friends their mother is a force in finance, from the young female analysts I mentor as they build their own bold futures, and most importantly, from the woman I see in the mirror each morning, confident, capable, and finally, fully visible to herself. Some evenings, when the office lights dim and the street grows quiet, I still think back to that chaotic yard sale. The once pristine gown crumpled in the dirt, the stunned neighbors, the precise moment my old life ended and my real one began. And I smile because yes, he tried to sell me for cheap, but I bought myself back at full, irreplaceable value, and I've been priceless ever since.